Alright, so today we're going to be taking a look at the actual Space Marines Power Armor by Baldermort Guide to Warhammer. As always, I'm going to be leaving a link to the original video and channel down in the description below, so go ahead and make sure that you check them out. If you're wondering why I'm wearing the same shirt through the last two videos before this one, I'm recording a lot of these on one day and to be able to release them out the following week, day after day, instead of doing them after work, which is when I don't have time, and then being able to do it on the weekends and then edit on Sundays and then release them periodically throughout the week, right? So with that out of the way, if this is your first time checking out this channel, just a little background on me. It's former Corporal Martinez in the United States Marine Corps. I was in 0311. I went on 2 deployments. First one primarily staying in Jabber over in Kuwait. Second one staying in Jabber again, and then also going to Syria for about half the time's worth. We had a little mission there, nothing too crazy. Now I'm kind of curious for a while now as to what lies behind the armor. I knew that people were saying that they had some kind of carapace that can connect into the actual armor that they put on, and then below that would be their actual skin, their body, which also has like these little nodes or something where they would like jack things into, like the carapace, the armor, and all that, I would assume. Also seen from the thumbnail itself. And before we get into the video, don't forget to like, subscribe. It really does help me a lot. Hit that notification button so you get notified every time I do upload. Without wasting too much more time, let's go ahead and get right into the video.
The two armies stood stock still, eyeing each other across the valley. With a heavy heart, the captain raised his hand. When it was lowered, it would be the signal to begin the attack. But it was a foregone conclusion. The army to his front was proud. Dressed in their brightly colored uniforms, stood in lines hundreds deep, pennants and flags rippling majestically in the wind. They looked glorious. Nor was their deployment or order in question. These were disciplined lines, well drilled and well led. But they were deluded. The planet had been surrounded by a warp storm for some 15 millennia or more, easily from before the time of the Imperium. As with so many other colonies of humanity, it must have regressed drastically during Old Night, for it was a rich and verdant planet, its skies clear and its fields over-burgeoning with endless seas of crops. Yet its technological level had only now recovered to that of a post-industrialized level, and only barely. The enemy army was armed with musket and cannon, horse cavalry and lances. They were proud, but doomed, for across from them had landed a full company of the Ultramarines, ready.
How crazy would it be if you're like in, 1600s, our current day today type Earth, and all of a sudden you just see these hulking people in armor coming from space, from the heavens, right, as they would probably think back then. This is essentially, it seems like an Earth that is back in the past that hasn't fully evolved yet, right? Or maybe it was evolved at one point, but then, with the Horus Heresy and just a whole bunch of things happening, and what would have been the revolt of the Iron Men, or just the war with the AI, right, where it really split the Imperium apart on the almost utter annihilation. And because of that, a lot of worlds were cut off, and then maybe some had to regress, and then eventually we're kind of pushing forward, and then this is when the Space Marines landed. You know how crazy that would be, or just how crazy it would seem? And the fact that these people see them and they still are like, hey, we're going to fight you.
To bring the world into compliance, into the sub-realm of Ultramar, the 500 worlds. It was decided, despite the previous demonstrations of power, these people could not fathom the extent of how outmatched they were. So an example would have to be made. One battle, one demonstration.
I was going to say, it seems like this could probably relate to the ignorance is bliss. Right, like when he said they had no idea how outnumbered, outgunned, outpowered they actually are. And because they don't know that, they feel like they have a chance. I couldn't even imagine if that happened in today's world, like here, right now.
One last chance to avoid rivers of blood by shedding a mere leg's worth. But they had to be brought to heel before someone else did, which heretic or Xenos. This planet had to become part of the Imperium. As the captain was about to drop his hand, signaling the commencement to engage, one of his men stepped forward and saluted formally, a young Marine, but a full-fledged one. The captain saluted back, an almost automatic instinct. The movement curtailed. He stopped to talk. "Speak, brother." The Space Marine nodded and took off his helmet. He looked hard into the eye of his commanding officer and stated, "Sir, I request to make one final attempt. Perhaps the example of one Marine is enough if delivered correctly." "Your proposal." "I request to take a picked view to the enemy commander, a picked viewer with images from our last campaign against the Xenos, sir." The captain smiled and then shrugged. "With my compliments," he said, as he motioned for a picked viewer and passed it to the young Marine. Bolter still stowed, picked viewer in hand. The young Marine put on his helmet, and then began the journey. He did not run or perform the loping bounce step that the Astartes employ to get anywhere at speed. He walked, alone in that valley.
Bouncing lope step. I guess you would assume that after a while. I mean, I do remember from the Retributors, I think it was, in the Astartes film, the way the dude was running, right? I would assume with all that armor, I do remember someone saying that it is actually connected to like their thoughts, right? As far as them thinking that they're running it helps them actually be able to move the suit as well. But I would assume if you're carrying a lot of weight, you can even think of this when you're hiking, right? In the military, that a lot of that momentum, I guess, can really help you, I guess, like move forward, right? When you're carrying a lot of weight. At least that's what I'm assuming.
From one end to the other, he slowly walked towards the lines of the primitive army in front of him. At first there was confusion. Then the white chargers of the officers could be seen dashing to the largest tent behind their battle lines, and then returning. Units of hundreds went out to deal with this one lone advancing Marine. As they gained their range, they stopped and went into 3 lines. One kneeling, one crouched, one standing. Every last one of them aiming at the Marine. Fire cracked out from them in a volley that would, no doubt, have destroyed anything that they had ever fought before.
Okay, I see where this is going to lead into the power armor now, right? I bet you this guy's going to be able to walk all the way through, and these people are just going to see it. I don't even think they have to look at that pick finder, whatever they mentioned, right? Essentially like a camera with pictures, right? I don't even think they're going to need to look at that. If you see someone that you're shooting everything you got and their armor doesn't even get scratched, it's probably a good idea if you can't hurt one with everybody or with that certain amount that they're using right now to fire. Look at this dude's face. It's probably a good idea that you wouldn't make it out alive if you decide to continue to fight them.
But to the Marine, in his power armor, it was less than water off a duck's back. Shot ricocheted from him again and again as he approached them, never changing a pace, never missing a step. Their lines gave a shudder, and the order to charge was given. Hundreds of men in unison, dressed only in cloth and with bayonets attached to the ends of their...
Okay, wait a minute. If your bolt rounds don't do any damage, what makes you think a bayonet is going to do much? And you can see this dude. You see this dude's like, what, 7 feet, 8, or 7, I was about to say 8 inches, 7 feet, 8 feet, even, they could be around 6 feet also, but you see this hulking dude. You see a big gun that he's got holstered. You see just how they got there and just the way they look. These people have some balls. Oh, I can give them that, but I don't. I guess at this point it's just maybe a sense of pride, sense of whatever it is that continues. I mean, at this point they would make great Imperial Guardsmen, right?
Muskets moved as one towards the Marine, who then quickened his pace and countercharged them. When the two collided, the men in cloth were thrown backwards into the air. Nothing stopped the Marine. He charged straight through their lines and out the other end, never stopping to engage, but never allowing himself to be slowed. He now charged at full tilt towards the center of their enemy lines. Huge clumps of earth began to explode to his left and right as the cannon found their range. Yet still, he did not break his stride once. A deafening cheer went up from the army as a cannonball hit directly on, throwing the Marine back 20 yards. It silenced again when he simply got up. and started his charge once more. As every form of weapon, shot, cannon, or even knives at their disposal simply bounced clean off the Marine, never once did he return fire. Never once did he lose his bolter. At the last, he made it all the way to the command tent and found a welcoming committee outside. It was obvious that attempts had been made by underlings to take their general away from harm, but had been flatly overruled. As the last ring of the general's Praetorians began to level their muskets and try to make a throw of it, the Marine stopped. He held his open hand up and then took off his helmet once more. He raised the picked viewer, which he had defended perfectly, into the air to show it to the opposition's general. "We will fight if you choose, but now at least you know what you face. But I want to show you 2 more things." He drew out his bolter slowly and carefully, showing that he was not a threat, and shot it at the ground. The men in front of him took one step back as his bolter round struck and exploded clouds of sod all around. The eyes of his audience were wide as he slowly slung it again. As he did so, he raised the picked viewer and said, "But apart from our arms and strength, I want to show your leader, your commander, one other thing. So at least he understands why we have come." An elderly but tall man in finery stepped forward, quite clearly their general.
I mean, could you imagine if orcs came here, or if Tyranids came here? It'd be chaos. But then again, that does remind me of a question I had a little while back. I think somebody answered it too. How many Space Marines would it take to actually conquer modern day Earth? I think someone said 500 Space Marines. I don't really think it would matter from which legion necessarily or from which chapter, but I think it was 500 was supposed to be overkill. So what would you think, around 300? And on top of that, if you eliminated any space assets, right, as far as ships go, I'm not talking about satellites or anything like that help triangulate things, but as far as eliminating any ships in space, I mean, they could have a ship in the sky or whatever. What kind of a chance, despite how small it might be, do you think Earth would, today's modern day Earth, would do against, say, like the 300 Astartes, right? I personally think that we would get demolished, but we would go out fighting, for the most part.
The Marine went to him and passed him the picked viewer and gave a brief instruction on how to change the picked in question. There were images of orcs and other xenos assaulted the eyes of this man for the first time. He whitened as he viewed, all colour draining from him. His view of reality shattered by less than 100 images. The Marine took half a step forward, conspiratorially, not aggressively, and he said, "These things exist, and worse. You have been in a bubble, protected from the reality of the galaxy in which your world exists. We, the Imperium of mankind, your fellow humans, have shielded you from these horrors. Your world has developed. Your population, your nations have grown under the aegis of our protection. It is now time to grow up. It is time to do your share. It is time to fight for all of humanity."
Certainly knows how to give a speech, which also makes me draw to a question. I understand that different chapters, different legions are going to do things their own way, in their own manner, because of depending on what their background is. Now, if this type of technique, or I don't even know if you would call it technique, but what he just did, what he showed them that, hey, there are terrifying things out there that would want to mess you up, if not for the protection of us, or without you being with the Imperium of Man. I feel like they would not need to do as hostile takeovers as they probably do, because seeing those things, if we saw those things, I'm pretty sure we would join damn pretty quick and really put up no resistance, even if it meant like, hey, we're gonna have some other people in charge of us, right? There's scarier things out there. So I feel like if they employed this with a whole bunch of other planets, especially when they would started to go back out and started to like reestablish connection with these worlds that were lost or worlds that were just isolated, I feel like they would have a lot more success, right? And then be able to prevent a lot more bloodshed.
Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and war gear of the Warhammer 40k universe. Today, we shall discuss one of the most important elements of the Warhammer 40k setting, both visually and in-universe historically. Without it, there are no Space Marines. There are no Impervious Grey Knight or Custodes, no Inquisitors tooled up to engage a nest of heretics or cultists.
Makes me wonder how good or how much more of a custody, how they would stack up without armor against other Space Marines, right? In terms of the Space Marine having the armor, but the Custodians not having armor. I just kind of wonder how things would turn out.
Without it, there simply is no requirement for melee, or for the level of destructive power in even the handheld armaments of the grim darkness of the future. Yes, today, finally, we get to discuss the very basics of power armor. Ah, power armor. How I love thee. It has come in many guises and many forms, in a rich and populous amount of genres, but I for one feel that few do it the justice, give it the import it should have, as much as Warhammer 40k. These sets of armor make anyone almost invulnerable. Power armor is the sign of the Space Marines, and to wear it and not be Astartes is a show of the staggering importance and influence of any who do. It makes one into a walking tank, a thing almost invulnerable to most forms of conventional harm. If used with expertise, it is deadly unto itself.
Stupid question. I know it seems like only Space Marines would be able to use this, considering the fact that you got these little nodes right here, and then they would connect to like these wires, and then which would then in turn help them connect to the actual armor, right? So, dumb question. Could someone else other than a Space Marine be able to use this armor, right? Maybe under some certain circumstances, but I don't know.
But let us lean on existing wisdom to gain the basics of this most important of wargear. To quote, "The enclosing suit of armor worn by Space Marines are made from thick ceramite plates and would be cumbersome but for electronically motivated fiber bundles that replicate the movements of the wearer and supplement his strength. The last gene seed organ to be implanted in a Space Marine, the black carapace, rests beneath the skin, itself fitted with neural sensors and transfusion ports. These plug-in points mesh with Space Marine power armor, linking the wearer's nervous system to his suit's mind impulse controls, turning the suit into a second skin that moves with all the speed and precision of the Battle Brother's own body. There are several patterns or marks of power armor, whose appearances differ significantly. Many older marks have special associations for certain chapters, and are often worn by their ceremonial honor guard or elite units. Power armor is maintained by skilled artificers who are not Space Marines, but servants who spend their lives working for the chapter. Especially talented artificers are justly celebrated, and examples of their work highly prized. Elements of ancient armor are religiously hunted down, for they carry both the history of the chapter and the deeds of heroic individuals. Such pieces are lovingly restored and painstakingly engraved with new designs. As a result, it is quite common to find power armor that combines pieces from different marks, every greave and gorget a recollection of mighty deeds and battles won. Power armor is fully sealed, isolating the wearer from the outside environment and protecting him from chemical and or biological weapons and toxic atmospheres. It also commonly includes numerous auxiliary systems such as radio frequency communicators, autosensors, etc. Space Marines go through an arduous process where they receive various biogenetically engineered implants.
Don't question again. You see this part right here where the shoulder guard are? If it goes like this, raises his arms, right? Would that not clink right here with the side of his helmet, thus minimizing range of motion? Unless it slides up and the side of the head. I mean, maybe I'm just going too deep into it. He does have a groin protector, which, you know, some not when I was in. I think they got rid of it, or maybe they just didn't have any more to issue, but we didn't get a groin protector.
Culminating with the implantation of the black carapace, which allows the Astartes a direct and instinctual neural interface with his power armor, transforming it into effectively a second skin. The advanced systems of Space Marine power armor also monitor the Astartes' biological functions, feeding the collected medical information to the wearer, and if necessary, to the chapter's apothecaries when he is wounded. The armor backpack contains the suit's main power source, a subatomic microfusion generator, and a backup solar power converter, and 100 solar cell batteries to store the absorbed solar energy. The backpack also contains the armor's environmental and life support systems, and additional movement stabilizer thrusters for low and zero gravity combat. All patterns of Adeptus Astartes power armor possess the following components. Auto-sensors. A Space Marine's helmet contains most of his armor's combat systems, all of which are referred to by one title, auto-sensors. These include thought-activated...
I'm assuming this is the Adeptus Sororitas, because I do remember that females couldn't be Space Marines because it was due to the that the actual gene seeds were only meant for male, you know, biologically. Something with the Emperor, I don't quite remember. It was a little while ago. But right here, it seems like the Adeptus Sororita type armor. If that is true, I didn't know that they were especially augmented like this, or in a form similar to Space Marines. I thought they were just kind of regular people.
...comm augers and audio filters, targeting reticules and rangefinders, tactical displays and Auspex links, and a host of other features that further enhance the Space Marine's already superhuman senses. Photo lenses. The photo lenses are the reinforced eye guards in the helmet that protect the Space Marine from dazzling light bursts. They also allow him to see into the infrared and ultraviolet ranges, as well as enabling vision in low light conditions. Respirator Vox Grill. The Vox Grill can amplify a Space Marine's battle cries to deafening volumes. It also contains a respirator to filter out toxins and can be shut off with a thought, drawing instead upon an internal oxygen supply. The Gorget, part of the armor that protects the throat. The Pauldron. The auto-reactive shoulder guards are shaped to deflect as well as absorb incoming blows. These shoulder plates typically display Adeptus Astartes identification markings, including chapter symbols, company and squad markings, as well as many other honor badges.
I did also mention in another video when I was talking about the shoulder guards that people were telling me that people would also use it as kind of a way to be able to deflect, right? Like back in the day against swords. So that's why you would usually see, I don't know if it was just illustrations that people would have, or you see people in games or in animes, whatever have you. You see that one is always, it always seemed to me like one shoulder guard was more pronounced than the other. And because I don't know what their fighting style would be, but it seems like say, for example, the left shoulder would be the one that's facing the opponent. So you can use that to kind of guard. Right, and use like maybe a two-handed weapon, or at the very least just have a little more protection.
Gauntlet. The armored glove that protects both hand and the wrist. Plastron. The armored chestplate that is designed to protect the suit's armored power cables, and more importantly, the Astartes' vital organs. It is typically adorned with the Imperial Aquila, or the Imperialis Honor for more veteran Space Marines. The Couture. Part of the armor that protects the elbow. The Vambrace, part of the armor that protects the forearm. The Pauline, part of the armor that protects the knee. Greaves, part of the armor that protects the lower leg. The Greaves incorporate gyroscopic stabilizers and power units that can magnetize the soles of the armor's boots for combat in zero gravity or other unstable conditions. Sabaton, the armor boot that protects the foot. Backpack power unit.
It is crazy how people could think of all this, or at least, I mean, obviously, it's not possible for someone to be able to have this type of armor, right? At least in today's world, but at least they make it in a way where every little piece makes sense, right? I think I also said in the Space Marine creation video, right, that when Luton Zero and I was describing how every single organ is implemented, right, during the process. It's like, it's crazy that they put so much effort into actually describing how all this would make sense. And I finally got a answer to what these backpack things were about. I typically always thought personally it was just for the jump pack, I think it was called. You know, be able to fly, or at least glide down, kind of like in Hell's Reach.
As discussed, Life Signs Monitor. Adeptus Astartes power armor contains a suite of life-supporting functions, including an auto-medicator equipped with various painkillers, combat stimulants, and anti-venoms. Temperature regulator. Astartes power armor automatically maintains the Space Marine's temperature. Heat is provided by the power core, and thermal buildup can be vented via the backpack's distinctive nozzles. As a result, a Space Marine can fight anywhere, in the cold vacuum of space or the raging heart of a volcano, even without noticing the change of temperature. Nutrient reservoir. Astartes power armor contains a self-replenishing high-energy liquid food store that can sustain a Space Marine's metabolism without need for further nourishment. During battle, there is no need for a Space Marine to eat or drink. End quote.
But for how long? How long can that last? Is it a week? Is it a couple of days? Is it a month? If so, oh my god. Dude, could you imagine the amount of time they could put in, or the amount of work that they could put in because of that? And when you mentioned the part about the temperature and not even knowing what it needs to be, because inside, internally, it's all taken care of, right? Everything is going to be equally, perfectly balanced, to quote Dennis. Temperature in today in real life sucks, right? Especially when you're out doing training. And say, for example, right, it's hot as balls in the summer and you're training over in 29 Palms in the Range 400 series, and you got a buddy rush 400 damn meters, right? It's pretty damn miserable, right? Because you got people passing out due to heat exhaustion. You got, or heat casing, I mean, and you got people literally falling on the ground. You got the sun beating down on you. You're dehydrated. Or what's worse, during the winter, when there's no mountains nearby to be able to block you from the wind, the wind's just hitting you. Sometimes it's so damn cold that when you do a gear dump, which is at the end that you do at a range to be able to make sure no one's carrying any rounds with them back to the main side, you have to pick up every little thing out of your pack to make sure you're going to have like a sergeant or your platoon commander go through all the stuff. Literally picking things up and your skin is breaking, like little cuts are being formed, right? Just from picking up stuff. It was that damn cold. Specifically during Steel Night. That was the worst field op, temperature-wise, that I've ever been a part of. And we didn't even do anything. We were pretty much just chilling because everybody was so damn miserable. All that because of the weather, which messed up the temperature for us.
Astonishingly difficult to mass produce and maintain. The investment in time, resources, and effort to produce them is staggering. In a world of ever-diminishing technological acumen, it is no surprise that power armor is actually very rare. Almost the entire production power of all of the Adeptus Mechanicus is devoted to equipping the existing and newly forged chapters of Space Marines in power armor. The attrition levels in said forces cannot be anything but skyrocketing due to the recent times of the opening of the Rift and the coming of the Great Devourer. Also, because power armor worn by non-Astartes or Primaris Space Marines is done so without the benefit of the Black Carapace, without this fundamental important piece of bridging technology, the armor only performs at a reduced level. Its protection is no less, of course, but its strength enhancement, speed, precision, acuity, and agility are all greatly reduced. Also, they require hours and days of training to move in properly, so a normal human could jump into a set of power armor, but their effectiveness in a combat situation may prove more of a liability than a benefit. All power armor comes from a standard construct template, or STC, so was originally forged in the time of the Dark Age of technology.
Okay, tell me this does not... These helmets in particular, first of all, badass skull. Tell me these helmets don't look like a Tesla or something Tesla related.
And probably for a peaceful activity like void repairs or exploration of hazardous terrain. It has been seen across the galaxy and has been deployed by many an adversary of the Imperium also. The techno-barbarian armies often employed it, and some civilizations that were encountered on the Great Crusade also. But what has always been lacking is the joining of the black carapace-wearing Space Marines with the armor. As such, the Imperium can be argued to have fielded the most devastating armies the universe has seen since the War in Heaven. For the combination is key.
Okay, hold on. I just want to take a quick look at this. You got a cooling system, radiator. Okay. Adamantium. For some reason, it kind of seems like this little section right here kind of looks like it's a, what is it? That Bane mask, right? A little bit. But I can also see why now. Also, in today's military as well, right? I mean, I've seen a lot of Space Marines that have bald heads, and it's typically the ones who seem to wear the helmet. The ones who don't, or the ones who just don't wear helmets at all, typically tend to have actual hair, right? So, I mean, it's kind of, I mean, obviously, you don't have necessarily a whole lot of room to work with right here, right? It's just kind of the thing within the Marine Corps. Your hair can only be 3 inches long on top, or about the size of your ID card. Now, this is also mainly, I mean, technically, I really didn't mind so much. I mean, when you were out doing training, you actually had your Kevlar on, which, by the way, in the Marine Corps, we call the helmet Kevlar. We call it the flak. And if you had a lot of hair and you had your Kevlar on, after a while, it would just feel like something's kind of pressing down on your head, right? And it make it kind of tricky when you're trying to put on your gas mask, and then you got to put the Kevlar back on again. It's just, it's a pain. It'd be, I mean, it could be doable, but it's, for me personally, it hurt, right? Because it felt like the hair is getting pushed into my head, which doesn't seem like a whole lot until you actually wear it for extended periods of time.
There have been many marks, models and designs, and in the future we shall go through each and every one of them to discuss the precipitating factors in their development, their deployment history, distinct attributes and advantages. I look forward to it with relish, for power armor is one of my favorite things in the Warhammer universe. It makes a single warrior, a single Space Marine, into a thing of horror and terror, for there is little that can stop them, little that can invade them, and nowhere they cannot go. So, expect to see a lot more of power armor as time goes by.
Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about that for a minute. Now, I gotta say, I really like the beginning story in this one. Something about it, yes, it was an Ultramarine. I liked it, though. I don't care what anyone says. I like the intro. And again, I kind of like how in-depth it actually is as far as to how the armor itself works. And also, it's just kind of crazy to kind of actually get like a picture of how Space Marine actually looks like without the armor, right? And you see him with the carapace, and then you see the actual... when he described it, when he was talking about those things that the nodes are attached, right? Or like there's like a whole piece of it under the skin, and the skin comes over on top of it. How the hell would they do that? I understand they probably mentioned that in the creation process, but then again, that video, I think it was over a year ago now. Roughly, sort of, right? Since I've seen it. But in any case, it seemed like this was kind of more of an introduction as to just power armor in general, like your basic type. And then obviously how we mentioned there's going to be other videos actually going into like the different types of armor, like Dreadnought armor, Terminator armor, you know, different ones. And they're kind of saying like which ones work best for what. So it'd be pretty interesting to kind of see like how more in depth that goes into, specifically when you're talking about something in particular, right? I assume there'd be a lot more detail as well. Other than that, I don't really have much else to say. Don't forget to like, subscribe, really does help me a lot. Hit that dislike button if you didn't like it, and leave me a little comments to me what it was. Really does help me improve the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all on the next one.